Charter Local Edition with your host, John MacDonald.
Hi, we are visiting today with Mike Tooley, who is the Director of the Montana Department of Transportation. Mike, thank you very much for taking some time today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell folks first a little bit about your history. You had a very long and lustrous career with the Montana Highway Patrol. Tell folks a little bit about that and how you ended up where you're at now.
Well, I had a really fun and 28-year career with the Montana Highway Patrol. Lived all over the state of Montana. Started out as a dispatcher and wound up retiring as chief, so I can't complain about how that went.
And so now you are the Department of Transportation. How long have you done that, and how did you get into that position?
Well, I've been there for 3 years now, and when I retired from the Highway Patrol at the end of 2012, Governor-elect Bullock called me and asked me if I would please run the Department of Transportation as part of his cabinet, and I was happy to do that because my time spent in traffic safety I thought would be a great translation to working with the department, who is also a strong advocate for traffic safety.
Sure. A lot of the issues end up being very similar.
Yes.
So, and one of the things that the department has been working on is specific to transportation safety, and you have an initiative going on called Vision Zero. Tell folks what that is.
Well, Vision Zero's concept is that we will accept no death or no injury on Montana's highways. The goal is that one day we have zero of either on our highways. We launched this in 2014. It's a multi-pronged approach that works with enforcement, education, emergency medical services, and engineering to drive that number to zero. And the whole idea is you just have to look at your own family. Who in your family or who in your neighborhood could you accept being killed in a motor vehicle crash? And the answer is zero. So if you could do it there, let's spread that across the state of Montana, which is really just one big small town.
And you mentioned some of the areas that you're looking at or focusing on to try to make that a reality. For people, the driving public, what types of things would they see or experience that are part of that initiative?
Well, what you're going to see are some more billboards. The tone of the message has changed quite a bit. It's a little more, I guess, realistic. As opposed to being so sanitary. We try to paint the picture of really what does happen on the highways and why we can't accept that. So you said this started in 2014. Yes.
How has the progress gone? I mean, have you seen results of this? Are there ways that you can quantify the success on it so far? Well,
I'd like to say by the end of 2014 we saw major results, but now in 2015 we've had a pretty difficult summer here in Montana. We're actually about 20% ahead of the fatality rate over last year. And really we need to reemphasize Vision Zero and get back to the basics and make sure every Montanan knows that they have a part to play in traffic safety.
And I know the issue of seatbelt use has always been at the forefront of a lot of things that both the Highway Patrol and the Transportation Department did. Are you pushing that still as a strong effort in Montana, trying to at least convince people that whether it's the law or not, they ought to be wearing their seatbelts?
It's the simplest thing you can do. It takes 1 second to buckle your seatbelt, and it gives you a much higher chance of surviving a crash should you get into one. 2/3 of people killed in traffic crashes are not wearing their seatbelts. So this is a very simple thing to do that would really make a huge difference in achieving Vision Zero.
You know, at the time that you and I are talking, it's about a week or maybe 2 weeks after the speed limit law in Montana was increased, so that in certain areas on certain interstates in Montana the speed is now 80 miles an hour. How does that play into the safety issue, or does it?
It really does, because the Montana Department of Transportation, when we saw this slew of speed limit bills come out, we assumed that one was probably going to be successful. So we worked with one of the sponsors to include our concerns in the bill. And the trade-off was 80 miles an hour on the flatlands or on straight highways, interstates. But we want to go back and take a look at some of those areas that even 75 has been too fast and do some engineering studies and maybe lower those speed limits in those areas to achieve a higher level of safety overall. And
so the trade-off that motorists might see is there are going to be areas where you're outside of the urban area, a lot of straight stretch, that the highway speeds or the interstate speeds are going to be 80, but you may be looking at lowering the speed limits in other areas.
Correct, because of crash history or curvature, it just doesn't fit 75, and 80 certainly won't. So we'll lower those there as appropriate and increase the safety of the entire system.
Let's change subjects a little bit here and talk about transportation funding. That is a huge part of what the Transportation Department has to look at, funding for all of the highways that need work. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how you approach that.
Well, we need a strong and dependable federal partner. 8.7 out of every $10 comes from the federal government for highway construction in Montana. And so when they can't pass a long-term funded highway bill, it really affects business here in Montana. Short-term extensions don't allow us to plan those really complicated projects that really require 10 or 15 years to plan. And also on the state side, you need strong state funding in order to match the federal money to make sure you can continue your work. State funds pay for maintenance, the snow plows, the guardrail replacements, signs. All of that is state funding, but construction is mainly federal, so we need a good, dependable source of funding.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a sense that people in Montana lose track of how expensive it is to maintain those roads?
Well, I think so. I think it's the department is very good at building and maintaining highways, and really we have, if you look at neighboring states, we have some of the best in the region. Mm-hmm. And I think what Montanans don't realize is how little per day they actually contribute personally towards that. When you buy your gas, if you're an average person, you're spending about $3 a week on maintaining that system. It's a great deal for Montanans, and one we hope to continue.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for joining us today. We have been visiting with Mike Tooley, who is the Director of the Montana Department of Transportation. Mike, thank you again. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you.
Charter Local Edition has been an exclusive presentation of Charter Communications, providing original programming.